In the nonprofit world, we go, okay, well, we really want to take off on this. We went from 8 to 17. Consistent effort over time brings the greatest reward.
People who are in fundraising understand that really still the core giving generations are boomers and Gen X.
Yeah.
And the truth is that 50% of boomers and Gen X donors are already giving on a recurring basis. And so this is a trend.
Something happened where we were just talking about the advent of in-person events and the opportunity to get folks giving on a monthly recurring basis just from that event and creating sustainable giving at your fundraising. And we're like, hey, you do events? I'm like, yeah, we do. It's like, well, let's continue having this conversation. And excuse me. And that's why we're here now. So Dave, thanks so much for coming, man. Appreciate you. Want to get you to talk about the book a little bit about the consulting that you do, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to be here. You and I've gotten to geek out now a couple of times about not only what's happening with sustainability and giving, but that intersection with events, which is just, I mean, spoiler alert, events are, if not the number one of the top channels, candidly, for growing sustainable recurring giving. And so like, it was a slam dunk. I loved the conversation we had. And so to do this in a webinar format and actually have people be live and be able to ask questions, I'm all in.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah. Awesome. I wanted to give folks, not even the Reader's Digest version. You can get as long-winded as you want about it, but let's talk about, when I was going, subscription economy, like Netflix and what have you, and just, people's gym memberships, as I like to say, and things like that. But just talk about where we are as a society. And, at the end of the day, givers, donors are consumers. There's so much symmetry between how folks give and how folks spend their money, in their day-to-day lives, of course. Right. And how we can capitalize that, and the impetus for the book, and get into the book a little bit as well, please.
Absolutely. And by the way, nobody has ever accused me of being brief. So
yeah. That's good. That's
the
why.
Cool thing about
we got an
this
hour.
Format,
yeah.
Is that this is not a speech, right? This is a conversation. And Jason, you and I just met a few minutes ago, so I'm loving this format. But at the end of the day, when I first started talking about this in the industry, this is my 21st year of fundraising, by the way.
Far out.
And yes, I did start when I was 12. We can do that joke.
Yeah, that's what I always say. That's my line.
I'm the Peter Pan here, man.
21 years of fundraising. In fact, the first charity fundraising program I ever worked on 21 years ago was for Union Rescue Mission in Los Angeles. Grew up in Southern California. Had a heart for that. Honestly, our family at times when I was younger, we were homeless. And so the chance to then actually have a career helping charities raise generosity to impact that work was just so powerful to me. The very first program I ever worked on was a recurring giving program.
Wow.
And I remember two things about it. Number one, how much work it was. Fulfillment letters and follow-up letters and pulling data and printing stuff out and shipping stuff. And yet the second thing I remember was just how vaguely frustrating it was, because it was really hard 21 years ago to raise money for a social services charity on a recurring basis. Historically, there've been basically three kinds of recurring giving. Number one, what I would call one-to-one or sponsorship recurring giving. That's where you have like child sponsorship or missionary support. In some way, the donor is literally giving to the beneficiary directly or indirectly, right? Because I know we sponsor Telma in Guatemala through World Vision, and that's a one-to-one. That's wonderful. But the problem is, guys, that the vast majority of charities don't have the program format or infrastructure to be able to do a one-to-one giving model. Okay, so that's out. Mm-hmm. The next kind of recurring giving historically that has been really powerful is what I would call membership recurring giving. And that's, think about your local zoo, museum, arts institution, media, charity, where the donor is at least partially the beneficiary of the organization's goods or services, whether they're intangible or not, right? I can take my kids to the zoo for, on a discount, or I consume the content, I listen to the program on air, stuff like that. And that's wonderful, by the way. If you can do that, if you can create a membership-oriented recurring giving program, good for you. But there's a problem, and that is the vast majority of charities don't have the infrastructure. They don't provide direct or indirect benefits to their donors. Their beneficiaries are the homeless in Los Angeles, or they're a relief development organization or a food bank. And so my math, Trevor, was that 75% of all charities fit into this third category, which is basically everybody else that's been left behind, not been able to really grow resilient recurring giving. Fast forward to about 10 years ago, I started to notice this consumer trend that was starting to happen in all of our lives, the Netflixes of the world and the Amazon Primes. And I wondered, as a fundraiser who saw what had happened in the digital sector, how people had slowly adopted digital, and then that exploded generosity, people giving online through digital means. I wondered, I wonder if we're going to see a similar effect where people get comfortable with subscriptions and their comfort level with giving to causes on a recurring basis will go up. Well, fast forward 10 years, that's taken place.
Yep.
So I spent the last 4 years, I've been speaking about it for 10 years, but the last 4 years researching, writing, what does it look like for a charity today to grow strong, resilient, recurring, sustainable giving? Mm-hmm. And, it's a deep rabbit hole. It's amazing writing a book, by the way, because you're like, okay, now I feel like I'm just at the beginning of the learning, learning curve. Yeah. So love to geek out with you guys on this, on sustainable giving, on events. But I don't need to convince anybody the subscription economy is here. Just look at your bank statement. That's pretty easy. 95.8% of Americans have subscription today. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Any guesses as to how many subscriptions the average American has?
I'm going to guess it's like 13 or something crazy like that.
Ooh, Trevor, you want to go? Let's see 9. In the chat too. What do you 9. Think the average American number of subscriptions?
It's a great question. Say 9.
9. You guys are like pretty close. Pretty close. It's 12. Oh, here we go. Kim, 30. Yeah, that's probably right. I probably have 30. Calvin, 15. Yeah. So the average American has 12 subscriptions, guys, and that's average, right? So there's much higher, much lower. In fact, a recent survey, they asked consumers, how much do you spend on a monthly basis for your subscriptions? The average American consumer underestimated how much they spent,
of course,
on subscriptions by $133 a month. That's like $1,600 a year that the average American is spending on subscriptions that they actually aren't even aware of.
Didn't even know.
Same survey, by the way. 42% of Americans said that they had forgotten that they had they were subscribed to something they were still paying for but no longer using.
Of course. My wife and I started doing something where we go through like once a quarter, every 3 months. We go through all the stuff on all the TVs, video subscriptions, all that. Cancel every one of them, except maybe like the one we use TV. Yep. And then as it comes on, we'll add something back to it because we want to
add it back in.
Things, and we add it back on. And it's surprising how much you can do in 90 days.
And there's even apps now, Rocket Money's the classic one where they will report to you, hey, did you know you're subscribed to this, including, by the way, your philanthropic giving. So you nonprofit leaders that are listening today, their gifts on a recurring basis show up in that app. So they're being reminded, like, are you sure you want to continue to give to so-and-so? Yeah. So it's a very real transition that we've seen.
Well, I had so I'm gonna go on this because you talked about 10 years this popping up. So about this is before Trevor and I, probably 8 years ago, when I was when I had exited out of the telecom industry and I was trying to figure out what my next venture was going to be. And I spent a lot of time on micro giving. Really that was the term I used, was micro giving. And Trevor and I have had a lot of conversations about it, which falls in the same thing, subscription based giving. And one of the big things is that, there's going to be I've heard it's like $64 trillion. Is that what he said the other day?
It was $70 trillion wealth transfer between now and 2040. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is just, it's unfathomable,
It's unprecedented. It's never happened before in human history.
See that transfer of wealth. But the people that are going to get it are different. It's not the same, and it's going to be different. We know that because the giving currently, the majority of giving in the nonprofit space is, 50 and older.
Yeah.
And, I think it's 80 or 90%. However, that doesn't mean that the people that are the younger aren't doing it. They're still giving, but they just give differently. It's a completely different model.
Mm-hmm.
And so my hypothesis at the time was, and I use my daughter as an example. She's not going to, she doesn't give to standard stuff, but, she didn't make a whole lot of money at the time, but still she saw a puppy that had feet were born upside down. And so she'd contributed to the surgery to do that, this instant impact feedback kind of stuff. But I think, that carries through what you're saying is a subscription model. And that's how people, especially these younger generation, are going to do it. Currently you can get them now, even people older. I mean,
yeah,
we just said,
yeah,
I'm over 50. I'm over 50 and, I've got, so I said 13, cause that's probably how many I've got times 2 subscriptions. So
speak to that, Dave, but I have another follow up as well.
Yeah. The data on that is, and this is actually a couple of years old. There was a national survey done, and they were asking, and then likelihood of giving and how people preferred to give. And in that study, they found that 52% of millennials said that they would be more likely to give monthly to a charity over a large one-time donation, which I barely count as a millennial, so I'll take it. But and this is the deal, Jason, to your point, people who are in fundraising understand that really still the core giving generations are boomers and Gen X.
Yeah.
And the truth is that 50% of boomers and Gen X donors are already giving on a recurring basis. And so this is a trend, in terms of subscriptions and recurring giving to places of faith, giving to charities has been growing across generations. But I do believe that as this wave continues forward, it's only going to increase in magnitude because, to your point, Jason, these younger donors are growing up in a subscription economy versus adopting it.
Sounds good for prospects.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm
deducing that's going to be well.
Growing.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like there's psychology to it, though. It's no like question. We used to talk about this in the car. A long time ago, I was talking to a car dealer one time, and we were talking. You'd go up to somebody and they'd say, "Hey, yeah, you want to buy this car? Yeah, it's $400 a month. Ooh, no, I can't do that. Well, okay, how about $125 a week? Sure, I got that. I can swing that. It's a mindset. Sure. It's just this mindset of it's these small bites that they think of, but yet accumulated together, and that's just we're in this payment economy.
Perfect segue, because we're identifying that everyone can do this. Everyone eventually will do this in some form or fashion. Everyone is doing this regardless of generation, proclivities, and purchases and what have you. You laid out the 3 categories, Dave, and this was fascinating in our previous conversation. I want you to just double click on this if you don't mind. 75% of that third category of nonprofits are not yet tapping into recurring giving. You call them left behind. Is that because they don't have the tools? And it's great that we're having these conversations. It's great that you wrote the book. They don't know what next steps are. Talk to me about the 75% that could be tapping into this and why it's so much and how come they haven't utilized this tool.
Well, and by the way, if you look at the number of charities, 501c3 charities in the U.S. today, it's about 1.5 million. So that math is over 1 million. So 1.1 million charities have historically not been able to tap into strong, growing, resilient, recurring giving. So the first problem was the 21 years ago, Dave, doing fundraising for Union Rescue Mission. Like donors just weren't responsive to giving to a social services charity on a recurring basis. We did have, I think we had 600 donors, which I'm not knocking. That's pretty amazing. But it should have been, 6,000, right?
Right.
And so, so the first problem historically was just this lack of, if you weren't one of those first 2 categories, you just good luck because the consumer and donor generosity demand just wasn't there.
Okay.
No longer a problem.
Right.
That's there now. So now what I'm focused on, and which is why I wrote the book. Okay, now what's the playbook? How do we actually? What are the tactics, strategies that we can use to actually grow sustainable giving? So really the book is organized around, okay, why is this a thing? Why is it different? What lessons can we learn from the subscription economy? But then the last half of the book is how to actually build and grow a thriving recurring giving program, because recurring giving is not a checkbox on your website. That's how most charities treat it. Like, oh yeah, you can click the monthly button,
Right.
And that's great. Let's make sure we have a monthly button, or that there's a checkbox somewhere.
Yeah.
But the truth is, your recurring giving program should be just as sophisticated as your mid and major gifts program, as your planned gifts program, hopefully as your annual fund program, as your event fundraising program. Like, you guys know, from the event space, like, that is a deep rabbit hole. And Trevor, when you and I first connected, I was like, I need to learn from you, because I've been to events, I've advised on events, but I am not an event fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
I have some other, expertise that I think we can bring to the table to actually leverage events, but you guys know that's a deep rabbit hole. Recurring sustainable giving is the same kind of, just, there's a lot of different tactics and strategies and ways of thinking about it and measuring. And so that's why I wrote the book, was to say, like, okay, great. The subscription economy has made this possible.
Yeah.
Now what do we do about it? So it's for those 1.1 million nonprofits to say, okay, what's the playbook? What do we do here?
And
but
I love.
Go ahead. Sorry, I was just going to say, well, but you're talking about the 1.1 million that aren't doing anything, but how, of the ones that are, what kind of opportunity are they missing out on?
It's just as big. I'm trying to think of a good example, because the nature of the subscription economy is changing the game. I'll tell you a very brief story. So talking about our kids. So I have two daughters, ages 12 and 15. So pray for me. I've got a freshman.
Yeah. You're like me. You're surrounded by women.
I'm like, okay, let's do this. No, but the reason I bring that up is because when they were born, each of them on their birth date, we sponsored a child, one through World Vision, one through Compassion International. And that was like, we want to help teach them generosity from the beginning. So we found a kid that shared their birthday, and we did sponsorship.
Cool.
Fast forward, my oldest daughter, when this was probably 4 or 5 years ago, so she was 11 or 12. We got a big package in the mail from World Vision. Well, I'm a fundraiser, so I knew what that meant immediately. You get a nice big 9x12 package. That means your kid is no longer in the program, and they want to celebrate that and make sure you don't cancel your monthly gift.
Yeah.
And so I thought, oh, I know what this is. So sure enough, the child that we had sponsored was their program had indeed actually graduated and succeeded and gone independent, which is great. And they said, now here's the next kid we want you to sponsor, kind of a deal. But now at this point, my daughter's 10 or 12. And so it's like, okay, so we sat down with her and we said, Paige, we are the ones that give, but it's really on your behalf. Like, this is about your generosity. And so would you like to continue to sponsor such and such a child? Or, would you like to do something different? And she took 2 beats. She was like, no, Daddy, I want to give to Summer in the USA. Well, Summer in the USA is a local nonprofit in our area that does an outreach to the Basque people of Spain, who have gone through some really horrific stuff, and they bring students over. And we had actually hosted a student in our home. Wow. And so I said, Paige, you do understand, like, our donation doesn't go to the student we hosted. It just goes to the organization in general. He's like, that's okay. But I want to give to Summer in the USA. I only share that, Jason, to your point, because child sponsorship is not the shiny object it was in the 1980s, when it was like, I can literally write a letter to a kid in Africa and have a pen pal.
Right.
Pen pal is still cool, like connection and global connection, but it's not the same kind of just life altering, mind blowing thing in the age of the internet, where my kids can text, their friend in Spain. Right. So I do think that the subscription economy is changing the game for those one-to-one sponsorship organizations. It's changing the game for the membership organizations. And I do actually work with both kinds of those as well. So I think you're absolutely right on to put a pin in that.
Makes sense. I wanted to talk about first few steps of building a monthly recurring program or a sustainable giving program. I shared a story, and I don't need to share it right now, but I shared a story on the podcast with you of our friend Christy Jeffries that created the Halo Project that was supporting 13 It's uncanny what she did, right? Let's talk about first steps and branding that kind of an offering or that kind of a program. And then I have a few other follow-ups and stuff about, and I love that you framed it that way. It's like it needs to live in and of itself. It is its own living, breathing entity, and that's how it needs to be treated. And I also don't want to scare people, Dave, about like, okay, it's going to take 100 people hours to get this thing off the ground. But like, branding it, communication, once folks give, things like that.
Yep, absolutely. And to your point, even some of the organizations I work with that are larger, that have thousands or tens of thousands of recurring donors, most of them, it's a part of one person's responsibility within a team. So I'm not saying that in order to do recurring giving, you got to, have a dedicated team. Although we have dedicated teams doing major gift fundraising. We have dedicated teams, producing events, stuff like that. And so we do need to have that kind of mindset. But to your question, Trevor, the first thing that I recommend that every organization does, regardless of where you're at, is you've got to benchmark your program. So you have to understand where you stand today, because you can't get to where you want to go until you understand where you are today. And so there's basically two questions, two numbers I would encourage our attendees and future listeners to look at. And that is, number one, how many? Number two, how much? How many recurring donors do we have today? How much are they giving on a monthly recurring basis? And then I always like to express that annually, so you know what the full number is.
Yeah.
I have one charity that we're working with right now, just to give you some different kind of scale examples. That when we started working together last month, so July 1, they were at 8 recurring donors. And so I was like, are you sure you want, you sure you want to invest in this? Because I'm optimistic about the scale, but it's, you're starting at 8. You're not starting at 100 or, at 500 or 5,000 or whatever. And they were like, nope, absolutely. We're in, we bought it. We're into the thing. They read the book, all the things. So we started working together. I just had a call with them yesterday, guys. They're at 17 recurring donors.
Awesome.
Now, if you were comparing yourself to Charity Water, who has more than 80,000 monthly donors, or some of my other clients, that would be super discouraging. Oh, it's only 17. But guys, that's more than 100% growth
exactly.
in the program in the last month.
Yeah.
And so this guy, I have clients that will often ask me, like, was that good? Speaking of events, I had another client that hosted a local open house. So it wasn't a fundraising event. It was just like, come by, see our programs, hear from the executive director. And we had just started working together. And I said, what if we talk about, a vision for people to stand with the charity and give on a monthly basis? So non-fundraising event. And it was an open house. So it wasn't like you had everybody like a controlled audience at one time. It was like, okay, everybody's walking around. All right, the executive director is going to talk for 20 minutes. So not an ideal situation from a event fundraising perspective. People didn't know they were going to be asked for money, and it was an open house. At the end of they did just a half a day, and very small organization, local charity. And they ended up generating, I did the math, $10,000 in long-term value from donors that converted that day. But the question to me was, is that good? I'm like, is that good? You just grew your program by 25% or whatever the number was. It was a double-digit growth. I guess is incredible. Let's celebrate this. So we don't want to compare ourselves. If we're at 8 donors, we don't compare ourselves to an organization with 80,000. So you benchmark where you are today.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jason.
I just one of the things that we talk about this a lot. So something that I say over and over and over and over and over and over and over again is consistent effort over time brings the greatest reward. And I think that sometimes, in the nonprofit world, we go, okay, well, we really want to take off on this. Golly, like you said, we went from 8 to 17. Well, okay. And, Trevor, we talks about this as well. Comparison's the thief of joy. And so I think if you're listening to this, when you're hearing these numbers and talking about this, there is something that happens exponentially over time with these numbers. It is not something that you're going to see in the first week, month, year, maybe even. But all of a sudden, something happens along the way, and this exponential starts to kick in. And if you cultivate it and do these things, I want to encourage you, if you're listening and seeing this, to think this way. This is something that can be dramatic for your organization over a period of time.
It's a snowball, Jason. So every one of those new recurring donors are going to retain somewhere between 70, 78, and 86%.
Okay.
So those 8 donors, 7 of them are going to stick around next year, without you doing anything, as opposed to I got to go get 8 more new, single gifts, And so it's one of those things that as that grows, it's one of those things that's really hard to comprehend, because it is an exponential growth, because you're like automatically retaining such a healthy number of those as you continue to add to them.
My mind hasn't wrapped around this yet, Dave. Probably, you mentioned it in the episode, you mentioned it a lot in your content. Why are these folks, like these new monthly givers, for instance, from this organization that you're working with, where they got 8 to 17 in 1 month, why are they more likely to give more over time? Explain that a little bit. Am I framing that properly?
Yeah, I think so. One is the built-in kind of retention. So most recurring gifts today, 21 years ago, that program I mentioned, that was a check writing program. It was like, I pledge to give $35 a month. And then we had to make sure they actually wrote the check and mailed it in every month. Well, there are still programs that, do that today. But as you can imagine, most programs are primarily credit card or ACH, giving, which this is another event, I think, really big opportunity. Credit card is great, like those but in any given year, 20 to 25% of credit cards will turn over because of
expire.
Fraud and expirations and payment issues. ACH is like
gold,
holy grail of recurring giving. And so it'd be interesting, by the way, to geek out on how can we, in an auction or other environment, actually get that recurring gift. And can we get it via ACH?
You can if you ask.
And so one of it's built-in retention. So the average donor retains at 78 to 86% a year, recurring donor, versus 24% for new donors. So let's invert those numbers. I just wrote a post about how retention is kind of like a nice metric, but it's not very motivational. Let's talk about churn. So if you get a new donor to give you one gift, give you $50, $5,000, whatever the number is, that new donor, 76% of those new donors going away next year. 76.
I've heard bigger numbers than that. I'm not disputing your stats.
But it's a lot. Even if you get somebody to give you a single gift 2 or 3 years in a row, still that math is 68% of them are 58%. 58% of them are not going to give again next year. But if you get a recurring gift, that's where it's like 14% are not going to give again next year. And so that's the first built-in piece. The fact that it's built-in frequency. So the average, recurring donor, obviously, if they give monthly, that should be about 12 gifts a year. Once you take attrition into account, let's just say it's 10 gifts a year. So a $40 donor is actually a $400 donor. And then the average recurring donor is worth anywhere from 5 to 7 times that of a single gift donor when we look at long-term value. So a single gift donor, so a recurring donor is basically worth 5 to 7 times that of a single gift donor. So it's higher retention. It's more gifts.
Frequency,
that add
all
up.
the above. And
then the last one, and I think this is really important for events, is your recurring donors are the most likely to give to your organization additional gifts. So we see on average, charity donors who give on a recurring basis give an additional 25% on top of their recurring giving. So we talked about this in the podcast, Trevor. It's like if they give $100 a month or $250 a month or $1,000 a month, they're still gonna, bid at the auction, and they're still gonna give that extra gift, and they're still gonna give at your end. It's a huge opportunity.
Totally.
It's kind of like whenever we talk about, they go, well, I don't want to have anything in the charity auction because if they buy something in the auction, they won't give in the fund of need. No, it just winds up being the opposite. If they have the capacity to give in the fund of need, they'll still buy in the auction. It doesn't matter because those are two different things.
Such a good point, Jay, because I want Dave to talk about this too. We're going to get in the weeds with events, but Dave, talk about and data, whatever, or just from the book, all the above, about how folks that are giving those large gifts, signing them up for monthly recurring, for instance, does not pull from that other pool of money of giving. They're mutually exclusive, is the way I've heard you explain it. Explain that for
Yeah. So, and this has been a big question. Many of my clients, especially the ones that are have a middle or major donor team.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we focus on recurring giving,
of course they questioned that.
Right? Are we decreasing or suppressing giving? And both statistical analytical data and anecdotal data from the clients I've worked with say that I've never seen that be the case.
So good.
The best data that I've seen recently was put out by an agency called Masterworks, who I was at in a prior part of my career. And I don't remember the exact percentages, but they looked at cohorts of giving by giving level when they choose to give monthly and when they don't. Short version is every cohort increased their total giving when they chose to give on a recurring basis.
Yep.
And if I'm not mistaken, the largest donors actually increased the most, which...
Can I ask a question about that?
So
that's real fascinating because, the first thing that I think of whenever I think of, okay, let's just say I don't have one. I want to start where do I go if I want to start this recurring giving? Well, my first answer is, well, who's our biggest fans? Who's already given us money? So those are the first people to go to. And I know the pushback would be exactly what you pointed out.
Yeah.
To get that momentum.
We can't ask them. Oh my goodness.
But is part of that the reason if you're doing a recurring giving program and you've got a plan of gratitude that goes along with that, because you said, you can't just do this as a sidebar. It's got to really be a full program. Mm-hmm. Is the potential that they're going to give more is because they're seeing the activity and they're seeing that more often? Is there anything to that? They're seeing, communication.
Well, on one hand, the best signal that somebody cares about your cause is they've given you a gift. So that's they're obviously bought into the extent that they gave you the one-time gift or they came to the auction, right? And by the way, I see Dion's comment about, we work so hard to catch people in the moment. We need to flip the script and educate the donor on the long-term impact.
Great call.
What I would say is that the most likely time for a donor to become a recurring donor to your organization. People ask me this all the time. It's like, is it because they give a first gift, they come to the auction, or they get the direct mail piece, or they get the call and they give a first gift? Like, when should we talk to them or invite them into recurring giving? Like we do the welcome series, and then it's after that, or is it at the 6-month mark, or is it at the 12-month mark? Like, when is that? The answer is, in every case that I've ever seen, the time to ask them to join recurring giving is in the first 30 days of their first ever gift to the organization.
Wow.
And people are like, what do you mean? Like, isn't that aggressive? And it's like, no, they have just voted with their wallet that they care about your cause. This is the time that they are the most aware, the most interested. Their heart was obviously moved to give that first gift. Let's get them into monthly giving. So another event strategy, what are we doing in the follow-up to the event, not just to the hopefully new recurring donors, we'll talk about that,
right?
But also to those single gift donors, because they're still going to go on the weekend away that they bid on, or they're maybe coming down from that high of raising their paddle. What would it look like to generously invite them in to recurring giving?
Love it. There's an old saying in sales: the best time to sell something is right after you sold something.
That's
but I'm not sorry.
But it's true. It's true. Well, this is one of the things I think that we don't think of, and I don't think in the nonprofit world we look at acquisition costs. I really don't know that people look at it that way very often. We know in our company, we know what we have an acquisition cost. It cost us X amount of dollars in staff, resources, and everything to bring on one client. Okay. We know that there's a cost to that, but it's the same thing if you're in the nonprofit world to bring on that one donor. And the thing is, the acquisition cost is the same whether they give $10 or they give $10,000. And
Right.
so back to your point about losing, when you're looking at the churn rate, and you're going to say, and why are some nonprofits, why are they very, much more successful than others? It's because they understand managing that churn rate, the acquisition cost, and how those two things play out. Because if your churn is, if you're churning off 30, 40%, let's just say 30, 40%, and you're adding 100 donors, you can only get to 300 donors. That's all you're ever going to get to, because your churns, you're never going to get past that.
Yeah.
Can I give you a little trick I teach clients about
please.
That's yes.
And then this is and I'll tell you a story. Trevor, you and I talked about this, about a recent actually fundraising auction event that I was at.
Cool.
It'll fit perfectly into this. So if you don't know the long-term value of your recurring donors, I said that 5 to 7 times. I get it, because that's a little more statistical. You have to calculate that.
Yep.
5 years of giving and what's the average amount a recurring gift, giver gives. The easy shortcut is you take the average recurring gift amount and multiply it by 40. And this is a conservative average, but it's just a napkin math kind of thing. So if you get a new $40 donor, they are basically a $1,600 donor you just got.
Wow.
Okay. So keep that in mind. So that's the easy math to say, like, oh, that's not a $40 donor. That's a $1,600 donor that I just got. Okay. Now, let me tell you a story. So I was at a recent event. This was actually for a client, but I was also attending a local event for a charity that works with human trafficking in our area. And so it was their annual gala. And this was the first time they were going to make a monthly giving ask. And so it was like, the executive director and the auctioneer who I talked to later, I was like, how are you feeling about that? He's like, I was so nervous.
Yeah.
And so, I'm sitting in the audience, so I'm not doing anything. So I'm just watching and hoping. And this, I was sitting at the table with this couple, and my wife's a teacher. This couple, the husband was a teacher, and he was telling us, you're sitting at the auction, so you're talking, you're eating, whatever. And so he's telling us this story, and hey, I've never given to the organization before. I was kind of vaguely aware of it. They mentioned it at my church, and I just felt like, man, we've got to go to this thing, right? Okay, cool. Well, this guy, so non-donor, never been to an organization event before. We get to it was the paddle raise moment. And again, this is your language, not mine. But
yeah. It
was like, okay, so we're going to do something unique tonight. We are going to do the paddle raise, and then the executive director had a nice little 3-minute speech she gave about how, the needs don't end here tonight or this month. Like, we need, 24/7, 365 support to do the impact we work. We've shown you our vision for what we want to do on an ongoing basis. If you would stand with us and help build the bridge, which is the language you used, build a bridge for this organization to move forward into the future, and you would commit on a monthly basis. When we do the paddle raise, would you, and they had big giant red cards that said, like, I want to be a bridge builder on them. Smart. Would you raise that with your paddle in this case? And so I'll tell you some of the results in a moment, but this guy at my table, and so I'm, we're doing the paddle raise, and, they're going down, and this guy, they come to $250. And this middle school teacher from, local town nearby, paddle, big old red card. And I was like, does he know that he just signed up for $250 a month?
Yeah.
So let's do our math. Okay. So that donor who's never given to the organization before, I know him well enough to know he's not a major donor. He's not what you would call a major donor. If he retains at the normal retention rate, 40 times 250 is $10,000. He's a $10,000 donor to this charity.
He should be treated as such.
And because he was and he was fired up, by the way. I took him afterwards because I knew the executive director. I was like, you need to meet the executive director.
Yes.
And it was such a cool moment. That one donor in that paddle raise moment who would not, I'm pretty sure, not have given a $10,000 gift, basically committed on average to what will be a $10,000 gift.
Well, I know myself, this has happened in the past, and this wasn't because of any recurring giving. It was just me from whenever I was an auctioneer, just trying to make, work the angle to get somebody to raise their hand, because, I'd say, okay, it's time for the paddle raise. Okay, who'd give it 10,000? 1 or 2 people to have their hand. And I had this idea, I think maybe it was at $5,000 or something. And I said, hey, I know there's some of you that would really like to do this, but you're thinking, well, I'm not sure I could write a check for $5,000 a night, but I could give $500 over the next 12 months or something to that deal.
Perfect.
And so, and the number of hands that went up when we did that was amazing. And it changed everything, because all of a sudden I said, hey, you can make this as a monthly contribution. I said, now can I ask across the room, hey, Ellen, can we do this as a monthly? She goes, yeah, absolutely. And it just happens just as a fluke. Not a fluke, just an inspiration that turned into something. And I think that's where your point is. There are people that really, they have the capacity to give over a period of time significantly.
Yeah.
Now, are they going to write a check for $10,000 and not miss it? No, no, that's not going to happen. He's a middle school teacher. However, he does have the willingness to put his treasure forward in an impactful way. And just because that he can't do a $10,000 at once doesn't anything less. And the power of that gift is significant, because he's a true believer. It's not
he's going to go tell
deal.
everybody about it too.
He's a true believer.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
So good. Yeah.
Well,
so
I'm
many
just doing the
options.
math real quick. So like at the end of the deal, you could do like a paddle drop. And if you said, okay, everybody who, give $50 a recurring gift, drop your paddle in. We're going to sign you up for a $50 recurring monthly gift. Even if you've gave $10,000, we're going to put this in and we're going to draw a winner out of it. Well, if you have 100 people do that, by my math, that's $200,000.
Yeah. That adds up.
It's pretty significant.
So good.
Wow.
Train riding money, as we like to say, Jay.
Train riding money. Baby. Hey, listen,
so good,
Dave,
dude.
we could sit here for another 2 hours, and
So
I know
good.
that everybody has to get going. We always try to get everybody out. I really appreciate you being here. So how about we do this? Why don't we just give a book away to everybody who came today? Normally we give away a trip, but today we're going to give something even better, because you're seeing how much money you can make with this for your organization.
So good.
We're going to give away one of Dave's books to everybody who attended. Thank you so much for everybody who came and spent your time with us.
Yeah.
And Trevor,
Yeah.
I'll let you have the final word, since I took
Oh,
over.
Dave, I'm floored. Like I said, I was getting so excited I wanted to swear a minute ago. So sorry. But I'm being serious. I was going to say, holy, you know what? But that's how it is when we talk to Dave. Dave, man, can't thank you enough. So good.
Yeah.
Love the book. Everybody's going to get a copy that was here today. Thanks. Yeah, John, I was going to say, when you had your question, I was like, hey, John, you're going to get a book. You're going to get a book so you can get into it. But everyone's going to have an opportunity to connect with Dave as well. We're going to send out the recording tomorrow. Do us a favor. Connect with Dave on LinkedIn. Thank him for putting this information out with the book. It's a beautiful thing. It can be done at your event. It's as I'm stealing Dave's words, but it's the best way to cultivate this kind of program and sustainable giving in person. So here we are. It's very, very convenient being the events people to say that, but I'm just really glad that we got confirmation from an expert. But hey,
we're going to send you one, Michelle. We're going to send you one.
We're going to get you. Yeah,
Everybody
everyone
gets a book. Everybody that's on here today gets a book.
Yep. Everyone that was here is going to get a book. It's one of my favorites.
We're also going to send the contact information for Dave. That way, if you want to reach out to him and had something specific, a question, potentially talk to him about, utilizing his services, we'll make that available to you as well. So thank you.
Take us home, Dave.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that we've talked about is I also put together a guide that's you'll get the book, which is where you've got the most rich content, but I've also got a 20-page PDF 7-step guide to growing your recurring giving. So what we'll do is I'll make sure you get that from me. Like, you'll get an email from me with an attachment to that. Make sure you get Trevor and Courtney and team your address information so you can get the book. And we'll get those shipped out to you. But guys, this has been awesome. I feel like we're on the beginning. I've seen this wave building for 10 years. The last 3 years, basically every benchmark report has said, guess what? The bright spot is recurring giving is growing. But I think events are an untapped space. And so we're at the beginning of what I think is going to be a huge wave in this sector. And I'm super excited.
Hey, everybody, we're going to send out a recording of this to you. If you would please do us a favor, if you would share this with some other people in the nonprofit professionals, it would mean so much to us. And if you had a chance, go on to the social media when you see it and give us a like, a share, a nod, a forward, a replay. We just
some
really
love would be cool. It feels good.
This is how we get this stuff out to everybody.
Yeah.
So,
hey, Dave, can't thank you enough. Jay, can't thank you enough. Y'all rip. Mail an address to Courtney at HGAfundraising.com. Once again, you'll have all sorts of opportunities to reach us. Dave, can't thank you enough for being so generous with your time, man. Means the world. So cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. Appreciate everybody.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Have a great Thursday afternoon, everybody. See ya.
The most likely time for a new, what I would call single gift donor to become a monthly donor is within the first 30 to 60 days.
Your best prospect list is the list of folks that just attended your event. Maybe you get on the phone with them or send them that email about the monthly recurring if you didn't take advantage of it.
But one of the other reasons recurring donors are so valuable is because they're 6 times more likely than general donors.